This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. The summer rolls on. U.S. men's basketball team trying to capture that gold. But in the meantime, a lot of stuff happening in the association. And to discuss this stuff happening in the NBA, you know I got to do it. My right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, Dime Mad contributor, right off one of the illest websites, www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna and PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. What's that summer like down there, man?
Doing great, man. You know, summer's still hot as always, and, you know, the NBA news is hot as always, too. And I want to say salute to you and salute to all the fans, listeners of NBA Baseline. Thank you for tuning in for another week of NBA discussion and basketball talk. Got a great show on tap, man. Why don't you jump right in, brother?
Oh, yeah, man. Definitely got some good stuff rolling out. In a little bit, we are going to be discussing, and I know everybody's been waiting for it, the secrecy is now out. The NBA schedule is finally released. So, you know, my man Shaw and I were going to sit back and kind of give our perspective on some of the upcoming highly anticipated matchups that will be taking place for the season. And then later on in our segment of The Drop, we will be discussing, based on all of the offseason signings, which team has put themselves in a position to be the most improved. Interesting question, and I'll definitely give my take on it with my man Sean and I. So a lot to happening. And of course, we got a coveted coast to coast where we discuss the news happening in the association. So we like to thank you and yours for continually hopping on board with the Baseline NBA podcast. You know how to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Hashtag up the baseline. Let us know who you are, what we're about, and what you're about. Available on all the major platforms. Available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, Player FM, Google Music, and also Roku. So be sure to download any one of these platforms and allow us to be your go-to resource happening in the NBA. One other important note for all of our fans and listeners, big shout out to the Sports Brothers. They are now simulcasting our show, so all of our people down in the South Florida area that logs on and rolls with those guys, be sure to check them out. Check out our show as we continue to get you plugged in discussing the NBA. Before we do that, you know how we like to make sure we get our reads on, and we want to get you, the listeners of the Baseline, prepared for the upcoming NBA season. To do that, you need merchandise, man. You need the gear. And in order to find a favorite gear, you need to check out fanessentials.net. All you do is subscribe, pick your team, and every month you get your team's gear shipped right to your front door. They find the sports gear so you don't have to. Each fan box comes packed with some amazing gear. It makes a great gift idea for any sports fan. Prices start at $14.99 to $34.99. Visit fanessentials.net. Use the promo code BASELINE at the checkout and get 30% off of your first month. Once again, use the promo code BASELINE at the checkout and get 30% off your first month. Be sure to visit fanessentials.net to get all the essentials you need for this upcoming NBA season. You know how we do, and you know how we like to set it off. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
down. Put the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. And listen, man, we were waiting for it. Next to the free agency signing, you knew that this was the next step in us getting ourselves amped up for this upcoming season. We needed a schedule. We needed to know what games we needed to, plop up on the ottoman's chair. You know what I'm saying? Get my herbal sangria drink to the right of me, have my remote control to the left of me, and go absolute ham on NBA League Pass because we needed a schedule. And the NBA has been so nice to oblige us, bless us with this upcoming season schedule. And Shaw, what more can we say? With all of the drama that has happened so far this season, this off season, it's very much expected, and anticipation is going to be these matchups: Warriors, Thunder, Heat, Bulls, Knicks, Bulls. It's just like back and forth. The Cavaliers, Raptors. We need to see it all on display, and the NBA has been able to put that out on the table for us so far.
Yeah, they did a great job, I think, this year in putting the schedule together. Obviously, we're having some offline conversation about maybe the timing of some of the games, especially specifically on Christmas Day, and I'll definitely let you jump into that conversation a little bit. But I think overall, everybody has to play everybody. We all know that, but I think they did a great job of making this schedule balanced. A lot of great things for there. There's not that those 4 games and 5 games, not as many back to backs. Adam Silver and his team have done a great job in limiting those things that really make kind of water down the game. And I was watching NBA TV as the schedule was released, and when you really look at it, this could really turn out to be a better product for the fans because, Popovich is going to pop, he's going to do what he does. But for the most part, that should limit the need for teams and coaches to feel like they need to rest their star players as much, since they will be getting more rest throughout the regular season, not having to play as many back-to-backs. So that way the fan experience can go, you purchase a ticket, and hopefully you'll see your favorite guys go on the court.
Well, listen, one of the things that I want to put emphasis in NBA.com, Sekou Smith, again, he does a fantabulous job of really illustrating the importance of some of the facts that we have to keep in mind on how these schedules are being set up and its comparisons in previous years because of the dynamic in the way that the NBA is trying to put its product out throughout the course of the season. So a couple of points to note, Shaw, and I'll just throw these things out there. You can find this on NBA.com. Check out Sekou's blog. And he pretty much illustrates everything. That what you had mentioned in regards to the 4 and 5 games, that's been reduced by 71% in comparison from the 2014-2015 season, 26% from last season. So there's something important for people to understand, that when Popovich likes to pop off, it's because of these scenarios. When these guys are playing multiple back-to-back games or playing 4 and 5 days, it may seem a little outlandish, and maybe because of the sport in baseball where that is commonality, in NBA, it might not be as common because one or two things is going to happen. You're either going to have to really acknowledge the fact that you're not going to have a quality product when the San Antonio Spurs are subjected to this type of thing, or you're going to have to expand the roster. And clearly the NBA doesn't want to expand the roster. So clearly they're going to have to cut back in the 4 games in 5 days.
Yeah. And that is, again, they've taken a long look at what this means to the teams. They've listened to the Players Association, I think, with some of their concerns and even, be put it bluntly, their complaints about having to play so many games, in such a short amount of time. Obviously, the travel, the league is doing a great job. Something that happened over the summer that we didn't even discuss about, how they're going to make sure that players get, the medical attention that they need, even post their careers, looking into things for players to get more sleep and rest on a regular basis. This is a collaborative effort, I think, from the league itself and the National Basketball Players Association to understand, okay, how can we keep our guys healthy? How can we keep our guys right so that we can put the best product out there on the floor on a regular basis? And I think they've definitely done those things over the last 2 seasons.
Definitely. Now, back-to-back games have been cut to about 16.3 per team, which is a 16% reduction from the 19.3 per team in the 2014-2015 season, 8% reduction from last season. And how important is that, Show, when we talk about the back-to-backs? Because, it's one thing when we talk about the four games in 5 days scenario, but back-to-backs, I think, are somewhat of a common theme. And I don't think the expectation is that they want to cut too far back from that, but certainly they wanted to be realistic with the expectations that if they're going to do that, it is obviously for the benefit, not just of the players, but the benefit of their ability to display some of these marquee matchups on multiple nights.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the Spurs, even going back into them specific, because they are the team that most notoriously, will rest their players no matter what the situation is. But especially if it was a back-to-back and then they had them on, say, the TNT game on Thursday night. So, when the Heat were the Heat a couple of years ago, like San Antonio play that Wednesday in Orlando and then be expected to play on national television, TNT, Pop was like, forget that. You know what I mean? So like they really needed to look at those types of things to make sure that, again, they could put the best product on the floor on a regular basis. And hopefully the coaches in general now will keep this in mind. They get the practice time that they've been coveting for so long over the last, decade. You hear them complaining we don't have enough practice time. I mean, they're never going to have enough, but they've done everything they possibly can, even including going into the extra long All-Star break. This is, again, a collaborative effort that I think is working well for the benefit of everybody that's involved.
All right, Sean, now I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. You are very much immersed in the fantasy basketball realm, as am I in the certain respects. And, we talk about DraftKings, FanDuel, and things of that nature. So from both perspectives now, what does this do for the fantasy basketball heads. I know that we're going to feature our discussions regarding fantasy basketball as we get closer and closer to the NBA season. But with this type of scheduling, does this negate the challenge that most of the fantasy basketball heads like to embrace when it comes to the type of scheduling that the NBA has done in previous years as to what they're trying to do for this upcoming season?
Well, and that's a very interesting question, because I think what it is, it's dual fold. It can help and it can hurt to some degree, because those weeks where you have a guy playing 4 games in a week, especially for those fantasy players who really do go by the amount of games played in a particular week, then hey, that's going to limit some of those things. But you figure that's going to happen league wide, so it should kind of be a push, if you will. But in those weeks where they only play 2 games, that's going to hurt a lot more too. So I think it's really one of those things where we kind of have to wait and see. But hopefully, it should keep the more important thing is it should keep people fresh throughout the season. So that way your guys aren't breaking down. Then you have to you'd rather have them play 2 games as opposed to no games. Obviously, if they're on the often injured reserve list. So I think this is just something that they needed to do. They've addressed, I think, everything possible that the Players Association could potentially be upset about when it comes to the scheduling of these games. And the next thing, I should say the next thing, because I don't think we're going to hear that conversation continuing on about shortening the season anymore, where we need to go down to 75 games or 70-game season. I think with what the league has done, 82 games is here to stay, and this should help everybody, including fantasy basketball players.
Most definitely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our segment of the breakdown, as the NBA has released this upcoming season schedule, and we are knee deep into the discussions of it, Shaw. All right, let's not waste any time. We want to get into the crux of this. Christmas Day. I mean, that's the marquee. That's the face of the NBA's. Here we go. Our season really is going to take off from here. All signs point to some interesting matchups come Christmas Day. The Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks will lead off. They will play at noon on ESPN. The marquee matchup, clearly, to give us a little bit of a sampling size of a possible NBA Finals matchup. The Golden State Warriors travel to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They play at a 2:30 matchup. They play at 2:30, and that'll be on ABC. The Chicago Bulls, they travel to San Antonio. That will be at 5 on ABC. The Timberwolves, they get a little bit of love for Christmas Day. They take on the revamped Thunder at 8 p.m. on ESPN. And then the Los Angeles Clippers take on the rebuilt Los Angeles Lakers, 10:30 at ESPN to finalize Christmas Day. What's your take regarding the matchups? What's your take regarding the setup? You know me, I got some thoughts about it, but I want you to go ahead and set this off on your perspective about the Christmas Day games.
Yeah, overall, I think the slate is great. And I think this is anything that an NBA fan could want. And I love the fact that they're letting the Minnesota Timberwolves get some love on here. This is one of the teams that is
they're rolling the dice. They are rolling the dice.
This is a team that is going to be a league pass favorite for sure. Getting Tibbs over there. Karl Anthony Towns in his second season. Obviously Andrew Wiggins, Levine. That's just a very good team that I think everybody should get to know, and getting them on Christmas Day is just amazing. And we all know how great of a person Karl Anthony Towns is on the court, but he's even better kind of off the court. So if they get some of those, those behind the scene interviews, if they mic him up, people are really going to get introduced to what a great player that he is, for the casual NBA fans, because that's when, the quote unquote casuals really kind of tune in on Christmas Day, and then they start paying attention to the NBA. So I think they did a great job at setting up the matchups that are taking place. But I know you have a little bit of a problem with the timing of one of the games in particular, so why don't you jump into that, brother?
Yeah, just a little bit of a problem. So, look, the Boston Celtics versus the New York Knicks, I love it. Obviously, the Celtics, Herald franchise, Knicks, great leadoff, okay? Would I like to have seen maybe the Boston Celtics taking on the Toronto Raptors, or maybe the New York Knicks taking on the Chicago Bulls? You know what? But still, great leadoff. I like it. Divisional game at noon. I'm sure Celtics and Knicks fans alike with the revamped New York Knicks. Everyone's going to love that. The Golden State Warriors taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers at 2:30 p.m. is my biggest pet peeve right now. I really don't understand the logic in putting this game on. Now, you and I were talking about this before we jumped on and recorded this show. And the only thing that I could possibly think of is because the NFL still has their games on Sunday, which is Christmas, right? And of course, next to church, NFL is like God. Okay, so I get that, but to your point, Sean, you just talked about this. The NFL only has 2 games, so I can't understand how this game wind up getting slated at 2:30 in the afternoon. This easily should be a 5 or 8 o'clock game. I don't care what you tell me. Adam Silver, me and him can have a sit down. We can have a conversation. Say what you want to say. It just makes absolutely no sense to me that this game, this is the you know what I'm saying, the tip of the iceberg to what might possibly be the rummer match of a preview as well to the NBA Finals. This is a game at 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm just a little bit confused. I'm dumbfounded by this move. This easily should be a primetime game. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, I agree with you. And I think, looking at the NFL schedule, they have a 4:30 game. So with the NBA starting at 2:30, that game would be in the fourth quarter right before, right as that NFL game is starting. But I mean, we're talking about the Ravens and Steelers right here at 4:30, and then they have another game at 8 o'clock. At 8:30 with the Broncos and Chiefs. So I am a little concerned that they didn't feel like they could go up against the NFL, with a finals rematch with Golden State and Cleveland. I mean, I understand. Now you're trying to put some of the lesser of the Christmas games against the NFL teams. But if I'm Adam Silver in the NBA, I'm like, yo, let's go. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Puff up your chest. You know what I'm saying? This game between the Warriors and the Cavaliers is basketball on PEDs. Okay? I mean, this is about as legal as you can get to be illegal. Like, this is the game that everybody wants to see in any sports genre. You can hate basketball, but you're going to love this matchup, right? So to me, this would easily be a game. You either have it at 5 or you have it at 8. I'm not saying that at 2:30 because it's technically a 1:30 game for Cleveland. Listen, I get it. Maybe that is a marquee time frame, but if there's no Browns game happening, right? And Golden State is on the road anyway, I don't understand why this game is on a holiday is not easily in an early evening setting, 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? Flex your muscles a little bit and say, hey, we got a nice product too, NFL. We could have it. We could have it with you any day of the week if we wanted to. You know what I'm saying?
They're definitely ducking them. The only thing I can say is I think that's like week 16 of the NFL season. So playoff positioning and contention will be very, very at a high pace.
And the Cleveland Browns will still not be in the playoff picture. So
this is true, no doubt about that. But I guess
RG3 will probably be at this basketball game before he worries about playing Cleveland, man.
But I guess the NBA just felt like with those 4 teams playing on Christmas, they were like, yeah. You know what? Let's just go ahead and stay away from that altogether. Get our marquee matchup the most eyes it can possibly get at 2:30. People have already, they've pretty much wound down, if you will. They've opened up their gifts, and they're pretty just much lounging around watching basketball. So 2:30 may work out for them, but I agree with you. They could have, tried to go directly up against the NFL if they had the balls, the cojones,
The cojones. I like that. The cojones. You're tuned to The Baseline. Kyle Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our segment of the breakdown, discussing the NBA schedule for this upcoming season. All right, Shaw, so let's go ahead and tap into a few other items regarding the schedule. Well noted, the NBA has upstarted its global games. It's obviously been very successful and really a great lead-in when you think about the fact that they're coming fresh off the Olympics in Rio. So I would anticipate London, January the 12th, Indiana Pacers, Denver Nuggets will square off. The Phoenix Suns will take on the Dallas Mavericks in Mexico City. And then the Suns will again play in Mexico City against the San Antonio Spurs. People in Mexico City love them some Spurs. May not love the Alamo, but they love them some Spurs. So this is going to be interesting dynamic. The NBA again trying to take advantage of its globalization and some pretty good games when you think about it. I think they don't want to dump all of their chips in the middle of the table with this, but certainly these are some good games. And I think people, especially abroad, will be able to appreciate smaller and bigger market teams kind of facing off each other around that time.
Yeah, I do. They continue to go over the well, if you will, when it comes to London, even Mexico City and places that, that are familiar with the NBA product, if you will. I'd like to see them, same thing, kind of challenge themselves a little bit. And we're West Indian Caribbean over here on our podcast, and I was actually looking in and researching into doing a story as to the NBA's presence in the Caribbean, which you'd be surprised really isn't that heavy, and we have more than one or two Caribbean players in the NBA currently. So I wish they would go to you can even go to a place like the Bahamas, if you will, or go to Jamaica. Everybody loves Jamaica. Who wouldn't want to go there? So when it comes to the globalization of the game, I want to see them start going to different places that we haven't seen. London and Mexico City, they love the NBA. They've been very supportive, and I understand you definitely want to give them, their just due and continue to play games there. But if I had one pet peeve with the global games, I think it just to be more global. Let's get some more cities, more countries, and more even some of the islands involved, in the progress of the NBA game itself.
Oh, I think that's definitely in the works. You think about the New Orleans Pelicans; they drafted Buddy Hield. He's Bahamian. I think it's coming, Shaw. I would really like to see somewhat of an emphasis where they are featuring the games, maybe when the money might be there and stuff, they might figure out a way to, to put the games in on the islands, so that maybe they can form teams there that they can play, and then ultimately have that team play against an NBA team in the off season, and during the season, then they could feature some games there. I think it would be a great idea. I think it's well supplanted now. You have the legend of Tim Duncan from St. Croix, that there are some great athletes that have an opportunity to get some shine. I think that the NBA has a viable product that they can put within the center of the Caribbean islands and really take advantage of the rise of Caribbean athletes trying to make a mark in the NBA, no question. All right, Shaw. A couple other things to note. The ABC will be featuring Saturday prime time. I know you loved it. We loved it. Remember, we sat and watched an awesome game between the Golden State Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So this definitely is a great concept being brought back again. And clearly the NBA sees a viable product for themselves featuring the Saturday primetime game. So I'm glad that will be kicking off after the 21st of January, and much needed, because, the NBA, man, they're poking at some of those places where the NFL ain't.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And again, you're right. I do love the primetime matchup. They didn't pull any punches with that last year, so I expect them to do just that again. They really did a great job, I think, marketing those games and making them games that people wanted to see. Sometimes it was a little repetitive, but those were the best teams. It is what it is. We saw the Cavs and the Warriors quite a bit on those Saturday matchups. Remember seeing the Bulls quite a bit as well too. But it'll be interesting to see. Again, I haven't perused the entire schedule, the way we should have. But I definitely feel like we'll probably get to see a couple more teams on the Saturday night specials, and I think it's going to be great. I love what they've done with that program altogether.
Yeah, and then another thing to note, too, Shaw, is NBA allowing the TNT to expand and broaden the featuring of NBA games. They're going to be taking over Monday nights, 10 double headers. And so that, to me, I think is awesome as well, too. Definitely going to have our fingers on the remote control heavy. I mean, bounty killer heavy.
Absolutely. Again, TNT, I think they knew what they needed to do with that. People have been pining, for more TNT coverage. I'm in the middle, in terms of, how much I like them. I don't like them as much as everybody else does when it comes to Ernie and Barkley and Shaq and all them. I think they're great. They do an amazing job, and they've won Emmys and the whole nine. But I think the NBA and Turner, they just know what they need to capitalize on, and giving them another night, to do double headers, I think is great. I think that's just, that's going to really bring in again, those casual NBA fans, and then obviously even the hardcore ones, because everybody gets a good laugh no matter what. No matter what you want to say about them, you do laugh at some of the things that they say in terms of the commentary. And then again, you're bringing good games on top of it as well too. And then when they don't have good games, Barkley's going to let you know about it. Oh, why are we watching the Lakers again? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's kind of the the song and dance that we go through with their analysis. But it's great, because I definitely think it helps promote the league itself. And those guys do a great job.
Yeah, definitely. ESPN and ABC will be televising 100 games, and TNT will be televising 64 games. So clearly the NBA will be on full display, primetime television, just the way that we like it. The NBA regular season tip-off will start October the 29th, featuring the New Orleans Pelicans playing in San Antonio, and then the Timberwolves taking on the Sacramento Kings. Shaw, what are your thoughts about that? I'm really intrigued by this, because I don't know if people really understand or are really feeling the youth movement, not just from the Minnesota Timberwolves, but this is now DeMarcus Cousins' time. And to have him have an opportunity to be playing on primetime television as part of the NBA tip-off, I think is a great, great look for the Sacramento Kings, who are really struggling to find their place in the NBA family tree, so to speak. And what better way for DeMarcus Cousins to really make his stake and claim to say, I need to be talked about in the MVP discussions than basically playing one of the better teams, the up-and-coming teams at tip-off on October the 29th.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that everybody gets an opportunity to shine, and that's what the league is definitely trying to do. So, I mean, Cousins being on the Olympic stage now, I think he's getting a little bit more notoriety in general, and he's been, great on social media. He's even has like a little beef going on with Brittany Griner, a little fake beef, talking about they could play one-on-one. So when the Sacramento Kings, get a chance to be on TV and everybody can see them, even for as bad as that organization in general has been, I think that's just good for the league. You want to have the exposure for all of your stars and all of your teams, so that again, the market sharing is there. People understand who they are, and then young guy might not know who DeMarcus Cousins is at this stage, and see him and really kind of take to his game, kind of like how I have, and see that team really kind of shine. But again, I'm excited about the overall tip off, which was on the 25th. And then seeing it's a little shocking because I feel like we're back in the same spot, because wasn't it like 3 years ago where it was the Cavs and Knicks that tipped off the season again, and that's exactly what they're doing again on October 25th. Cavs and Knicks. I mean, I know the Knicks are revamped, but I was like, all right, well, I guess it's cool, and everyone wants to see what's going on with the New York Knicks, the new look Knicks, if you will. But I thought that was an interesting choice for an opening day game. What about you?
I do think it was a very interesting choice, and kudos to Phil Jackson for at least filling the Knicks roster with a formidable basketball team that might actually give us something to watch other than the banner raising and the ring ceremony, or staring at the only rings that we probably be staring at is the one that J.R. Smith put on on his wife's finger this off season. But I do think that this is an interesting setup for the NBA season tip off. And if anything else, I think it's going to be a quality basketball game. Clearly, the Cleveland Cavaliers are not the same team, but there's a lot to be said now about where Carmelo Anthony is his eye on the prize, redemption for Derrick Rose, hoops redemption, and is what kind of LeBron James are we going to see? Is he going to be the one that's going to defer to Kyrie Irving? We've talked about the dynamic of LeBron James and what he did to help them win this first championship in franchise history. But we also saw something else in Kyrie Irving, and I'll be very interested to see what kind of LeBron James comes out. Is he going to be the guy that is content with knowing that he won a championship for the city? He fulfilled the obligation. I know he signed that extension, but is he also the dude that's really to ready to kind of, pass the reins over to Kyrie Irving? Because we know what we're capable of seeing of Kyrie. And it was a question of, can these two guys complete it together? So it'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Shaw, one last thing before we kind of give our final thoughts about the scheduling. Is it just me, or is it really weird that we have to wait basically until February for Kevin Durant to play in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and that was definitely something that I was.
Is it just me? I was just wondering. I was like, I'm
gonna jump right into that. I am surprised. I think if there was a little bit of a gaffe, if you will, on the schedule, not having that matchup, until the 21st of February is and I think that would actually be after All-Star, no? So that's weird to me. You could have made that a marquee matchup. Yeah, I thought a lot of people thought maybe it would have been a Christmas Day game, but obviously having the finals rematch was more important. But I think another marquee day that they have is MLK. So I really thought it could have been on that day, that they could have made that OKC Golden State matchup, in Oklahoma. That could have been the day there. Because especially when you look at the Chicago Bulls and Miami Heat, they play, I think, November 10th, which is like the fourth game of the season for the Heat or something like that. They're getting Wade back, back into his home, his former stomping grounds, if you will. So they missed the boat a little bit with that. But, before we sign off on this segment, which of those two, well, I mean, you know what? You don't have to limit it to two. Which of the return homes are you most looking forward to? I mean, is it the obvious choice here? I think with Durant and OKC, Wade and the Bulls, Horford going back to Atlanta. Which of those is going to strike you the most? You think is going to have the most intrigue?
I think no question it's going to be Dwayne Wade coming back to Miami. And listen, let me temper this by saying that I know everybody's going to be on the whole Durant bandwagon thing. But I really liked in the Derrick Rose situation because he got traded. But I think that there's something to be said about what really should happen when Dwayne Wade steps on that basketball court, and what real Miami Heat fans, how real the real Miami Heat fans are going to be when he does. Okay, because let's keep this in mind. Dwayne Wade chose to leave Miami, right? He chose to sign with the Chicago Bulls. Okay, so no matter what you tell me, people could look at this and say, well, he left us. Good riddance, right? Like if Durant does that, he comes back to OKC. OKC people are going to probably boo the heck out of him, even though he gave them 9 years of being a viable and relevant basketball team, right? Dwayne Wade comes back there. Are the real Miami Heat fans going to really sit there and say, is this more about Dwayne Wade? We want him back here. He should always and will always be a Miami Heat. Or will this be more of the two-faced facade-like type thing because he chose to leave? And that to me is the more intriguing aspect of this whole thing. When I look at all three of them, I look at Dwayne Wade coming back to Miami, how Pat Riley will embrace him, how Mickey Arison will embrace him, and how the Miami Heat fans will embrace him. Because quite honestly, I don't think the Miami Heat will ever be the same basketball team because of what they've done. And I think that will have a much more longer, lingering effect on this franchise, regardless of how successful they may possibly become post the Dwayne Wade era.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I obviously live in the South Florida area, so there's a lot of conversation about that. And I think the overwhelming feeling on that is that it's going to be maybe 80% positive. There'll be some smatterings of boos or sprinkled throughout the crowd, but they've done a great job, I think, down here. In terms of putting some the tributes in the paper, and then they had a nice video tribute at the American Airlines Arena for all to see in the downtown Miami area. I think it's going to be primarily positive for Wade and even emotional for him, when he gets there. But there'll definitely be some guys or some fans who are not on board with that at all. But I think overall, like I said, it will be a good experience for Wade and the Miami Heat in general.
Yeah, well, listen, all eyes are going to be pointed on same faces in new places. I mean, that is definitely going to be the theme for this upcoming season. The schedule is set. We are ready. Hopefully the players will be ready as well, too. Exciting basketball ahead, and we cannot wait. Definitely cannot wait. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And this week on The Drop, look, let me start this off by saying, Shaw, I don't like you, man. I don't like you. I mean, damn, man. Can't you wait? It's already hot enough as it is, man. You gonna cause my head to to melt. Too much thinking in the summer, man. Way too much thinking. Oh, gosh, I know. So vicious.
Stay with me, man. Stay with me.
Oh, okay.
Good money.
But the reason why I just don't like you, man, is because this is a really interesting question. And for the drop topic, the question is, which team has improved themselves for this upcoming season? Now, let me preface this by saying, Shaw, the reason why I said a few moments ago that I don't like you is because you could be tricking me when you ask this question.
Oh, we have a qualifier.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like those Jason Stark MLB trivia questions. You know what I'm saying? Where it seems real simple, but then when you start actually thinking about it, you feel like you should have taken the GRE before you sat down and actually had to give this answer to you. So I'm going to preface this by saying, I get what you're saying when we talk about the most improved team based on the signings and the trades and acquisitions. Who has improved themselves the most? But I will say that when you talk about most improved teams, sometimes we don't preface the idea that maybe by not doing anything, the team can actually be improved. Maybe by being sure that they kept the players that they needed to keep, they've improved themselves a lot better than where some other teams probably are. But with that being said, Shaw, I know what you're trying to say. And I think it's a very valid question because after the dust is cleared and all of the wheeling and dealing has surpassed, which team really has put themselves in the best position possible to improve upon what they have done this previous season.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a qualifier involved. I'm not talking about the Golden State Warriors because I mean they had the best offseason, obviously getting Kevin Durant and the prize of free agency. So I think that's kind of a moot point, if you will. But you could also make the argument, if you're talking about the most improved teams, well, even with Kevin Durant, you think the Warriors are going to win more than 73 games next year? I mean, how can they improve within the regular season? Based on that, they're going to run 75 games, 77 games? No. So I think for me, that's what it boils down to. Like I have a qualifier in it, and I think you had a great point in setting this up too. That just because you made a bunch of moves and signed a bunch of players, that doesn't mean you had the best offseason. I think typically, trades and acquisitions are, well, I mean, they're always meant to improve and enhance your team, but sometimes there's an addition by subtraction, and sometimes it's the move that you didn't make that make your team better. So we'll jump right in, to some of those teams. And I think one of the teams that I'm going to start with, and there's one that's very obvious, but I'm not starting with them. But the team I think is going to be one of the most improved is the Utah Jazz. I love what they've been able to do in the offseason, getting in a couple veterans and Boris Diaw and Joe Johnson to kind of just pace them and show them how to win as they head in and really should be on the brink of making the playoffs this year. Obviously, Minnesota is another team in the Western Conference that I think is going to be one of the most improved teams in general, but that has a lot to do with Thibodeau going to that roster to coach them. But Utah, we've been waiting for it. We've been waiting for this team to take that step. And I really feel like this is going to be it. George Hill thrust into starting point guard role. That lets Dante Exum become a backup point guard, which I think he's more suited for. Another year of Rodney Hood kind of developing. Finally hoping Alec Burks stays healthy and is able to help them, on both sides of the floor in terms of, playmaking and playing some defense. Coming off that bench too, another year of Gordon Hayward, developing obviously Rudy Gobert and his growth. And hopefully he can get some more offense going to go along with the great rebounding and defense he has. And your boy Trey Lyles really coming into his own, had an amazing summer league. I think this is a team poised to take a huge step and maybe win maybe 8 to 10 more games than they did a season ago.
Yeah, I definitely like your pick, Shaw. I completely agree with you. I'm going to go on the opposite side of the conference, and I think it's a tie, and ironically enough, that the tie is actually out of the same division between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons. But I'm gonna probably say the Detroit Pistons more so than I am.
Really?
So yeah, and the reason why I say this is because the key to me is one, them making sure that they keep Andre Drummond. I think that was absolutely key for them. Okay, the upside for this guy, the man child, the man beast. He's quickly becoming the man beast. He to me is the centerpiece for what I really feel like is driving the mentality and the mantra about that old school Pistons teams that we remember. I'm not talking bad boy Pistons teams, but I'm talking about the Pistons in the early 2000s when you had the Billups and you had the Rasheed Wallace and the Ben Wallaces and that type of team. I think he is the glue because he's young. He has so much of an upside and he makes other guys look good. He makes Reggie Jackson look good. But the fact that they signed Ish Smith, Shaw, let me tell you something. I get what, listen, everybody's talking about trust the process with the Philadelphia 76ers. But I am so glad that the Philadelphia 76ers gave Ish Smith an opportunity for him to display his skills. And I feel ultimately bad that they found a way to not retain Ish Smith for that basketball team. But I am so happy that the Detroit Pistons found a way to get him because they needed an offset from Brandon Jennings. And I think that they got that. A pass-friendly basketball player who I think can shoot the basketball a little bit better than people can give credit for, plays at an extremely better pace that I feel Reggie Jackson plays. I still think that he's learning this system with Stan Van Gundy, but I think with a much more of a veteran mentality and at less the cost and the headache. And I feel like that is going to be the need. We saw this in the playoffs when the Pistons took on the Cavaliers, how much they needed a backup point guard to really help offset and to spark them either when they were on runs or they lost runs. And I think Ish Smith is that kind of guy where he can get the ball to guys, give them opportunities to shoot, and he can dribble and penetrate. I like what I'm seeing from this Pistons team. And while we're going to be talking about the Pacers and we're going to talk about the Bucks, People need to look out for this Pistons. I know I keep saying the Pistons, but I think this is where it's finally coming to fruition. They made the playoffs last year, but they made a couple of key signings. John Lure, they signed him on. A couple of key signings, veteran guys, solid, grounded guys that can come in and really help Stan Van Gundy and this young basketball team sustain what they've already done from last season.
Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following our podcast, you'd have to know that Cal Gameface Lee is a not even a closet Detroit Pistons fan. This guy has been riding the Pistons bandwagon for a little while. He's going to keep riding them until they win the championship.
Fall off. But I'm not a Pistons fan. I'm just a Pistons admirer. I'm just admiring the talent. Let me admire the talent.
It's all good. No, but we all love Ish Smith here, and I think, again, he was a great addition. I thought that was a great signing, and, like you said, very affordable. A lot of people think Ish could have gotten a little bit more money if he would have waited a little bit, but, for a guy, and I remember it was Steve Schuyler of Basketball Insider said, listen, when you've been a guy who's been a journeyman like Ish Smith has, if someone says, hey, we're going to give you this loot, then you take it. You don't, wait around. Although, again, I really do feel like he could have gotten a better deal somewhere else. And I agree with you. I think even just having Tobias Harris there for the entire season, getting fully acclimated to that, I think that really can really help propel this Pistons teams, to the next level.
Like I said, you don't have to do too much, right? Just do enough.
And grow together.
Exactly. And fill in the voids, fill in the needs, not revamp and just get the attractive names and, all eyes on. Don't be splashy. The Pistons, they made the playoffs for a reason, right? And so that's my whole thing, is that what they did is essential to not take themselves away, but put themselves in a better position to be competitive. And I think that they know this. And I think even Ish Smith understood this as well, too, that he really sees an opportunity for him to make a name for himself as that dude, as that guy to really help that second unit. And at times, and listen, we got to trust in the fact that we don't know the true health conditions of Reggie Jackson at times. We've seen him go through some injury bugs as well. So if Ish Smith himself can stay healthy, they've got a good, solid backcourt.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. And, but I think we buried the lead here. Obviously, the teams that people would, if you're listening to this segment, are going to say, oh, well, what about the Pacers? And what about the Knicks?
Of course.
So let's go ahead and, talk about the Pacers and the Knicks. So we'll start with Indiana. And obviously, they are an improved team from a depth standpoint in terms of roster, overall talent they have on this team. Nate McMillan, that's, I think, where we're both a little bit concerned in terms of them running an effective offensive pace. This team was 11th in pace last year, which wasn't terrible, all things considered. And now they have a bunch of guys, a bunch of athletes, adding a guy like Jeff Teague and then Thaddeus Young as well on the wing. But then they kind of reversed all of that when they added Al Jefferson to the center position. So it'll be interesting to see what role he plays, for this team. But they've added a ton of bodies.
Nothing like get a young Robert Parrish and Al Jefferson.
It's just like, they added a ton of bodies.
Larry Bird is probably looking at him. He's like, Robert, is that you? Robert, damn, man. He's like, you don't look like you aged.
But I think the thing when you think about Jefferson is that he's there to really kind of help, a guy like Miles Turner really develop and help Turner develop in the post and show him some of those old man ground moves, if you will, too. But I think that's going to be another thing, too. We look at Turner, a second year there now, building that chemistry with Paul George. And all these moves, you really got to think about this. It takes a lot of pressure off Monta Ellis and what he is expected to do. They have a bunch of guys who can really kind of fill in behind Paul George. Paul George will obviously be, the star and doing his thing, but everybody else can be capable to kind of chip in on a regular basis. And, same thing off CJ Miles, a guy who's just, you just never know what you're going to get with him. No pressure on CJ Miles now. Come in here and hit a couple threes and go sit down. I think this team has done a really good job in terms of getting talent on this roster. We just have to see how it's all going to mesh together.
Yeah, listen, and how it's going to play under Nate McMillan, I think is most important. Right. But when you got guys like Jeff Teague and Thaddeus Young, I think these are guys that really understand the writing on the wall. Clearly, these are guys that are going to be looking to, to get that one solid, contract. And with the money that's being thrown around over the next couple of years, this is about as good as an opportunity as you get because you're playing next to a solid player in Paul George, a team that's flown under the radar and essentially had put themselves in the position to play in the playoffs Jeff Teague and has lucked himself into a great opportunity. He was in the playoffs last year with the Hawks. Now he's possibly going to be playing in the playoffs with the Indiana Pacers. And, Shaw, this is really an interesting dynamic, man. Potentially that we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 teams possibly playing in the in the Eastern Conference playoffs come next year. And you're thinking about the Milwaukee Bucks, the Detroit Pistons, the Indiana Pacers, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. We saw this, in the Central. And we saw this, the last time that we saw this was the Southwest Division a couple of years ago when the Pelicans made it in.
Yeah. They kind of clean sweep the division, if you will, in terms of getting into the playoffs. And, the other team, obviously, we need to talk about is the Knicks. And another thing, too, where, something very interesting came out over the summer with Derrick Rose saying that, well, yeah, you know what? We're a super team too. When asked about what the Warriors did with Kevin Durant, and he's like, they feel like that this is a team that really could be really surprise people. And the Knicks, they're perplexing, man. I don't know. I mean, it could go 100 different ways with them. Obviously based on health first and foremost, but I really love the addition of Aaron Aflalo to kind of balance out that starting lineup, and space the floor a little bit. Sorry, not Aaron Aflalo, Courtney Lee. Aaron Aflalo and going to Sacramento.
You must have thought Courtney was his twin.
Right. Well, Aflalo was there last year, so I'm all messed up. But yeah, Courtney Lee, and what he's able to do for this Knicks roster, I think will be beautiful. He's really going to be the glue guy to what they do. Rose and Noah, their health is going to be of the utmost concern on a regular basis. Carmelo, and then with all these new guys on the roster, how does that stimulate or impact Porzingis? Does he get the touches that he wants to get or needs to get to continue his growth? Or is it just like, well, great, now you don't need to put as much pressure on him as well? I love the signing of Brandon Jennings. They got him for what was it, $5 million? I mean, it's just like, that was just superb signing in case Rose does go down. Jennings will be very, very capable, also coming off an injury from a season ago as well too. This team and your boy Justin Holiday, which I know you have a lot of love for, this team has made a lot of moves. It's just and obviously Jeff Hornacek being the head coach, just have to see how it all plays out. I think the overwhelming concern, not necessarily concern, the overwhelming thought on it right now is that it's going to be positive. They're going to be a better team than they were last year, which isn't going to be hard to do. But are they playoff and NBA Eastern Conference elite?
Well, let's put it like this, Shaw. I'm sure that they are. Well, Carmelo's in Rio. He's probably sending Adam Silver tweets. But I'm sure that the rest of the Knicks, Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah in particular, have rushed themselves over to the NBA office out here and are hugging Adam Silver and the committee to put together this schedule. Because now that you've reduced the 4 games in 5 days and you've reduced the back-to-backs, great opportunity for Jeff Hornacek to figure out a way to preserve the health of guys like Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah, right? So we talked about how the product might lend itself to be benefited by the scheduling of the NBA. How about the New York Knicks fans seeing their team sustain health, minus freak injuries, because of the fact that they're not going to have to endure the rigors of the previous NBA season schedulings in years past. So this is a great sign, for this Knicks to capitalize on, while everyone knows hands down that the Cleveland Cavaliers are the favorite team. If we're going to go by, the notion of what Derrick Rose is saying, this essentially is a super team in the Eastern Conference because of the name and the play value. Derrick Rose, former MVP, Carmelo Anthony, always one of the top offensive players in the NBA. Kristaps Porzingis, virtual runner-up in the NBA Rookie of the Year candidacy this past season. Courtney Lee, lockdown defender, still's got some got some left in the tank. Joakim Noah, when healthy, is about as physical as you could possibly get in the front court. A vast improvement from a passing and offensive skills standpoint than Robin Lopez. This is a team that should clearly be in the middle of the pack, if not in the top 3 when we talk about Eastern Conference playoff teams. And essentially, all of that is predicated on, again, can they play up to the level of the expectations that these guys had set for themselves in their previous years, minus Kristaps Porzingis? And can Jeff Hornacek figure out a way to systematically get the ball to these guys when it matters the most? I will say this much. The one caveat that I'm looking at is, where will Kristaps Porzingis get his buckets? Will he get it in the post, or will they ask him to shoot the basketball? Because if you've got Carmelo, you've got Derrick Rose, and you've got Joakim Noah, these are guys that want to pound the paint. They're not going to shoot the ball particularly well. So Kristaps and Courtney Lee are essentially going to be their best outside perimeter shooters. And I just wonder if that's going to compromise the developmental process that Kristaps Porzingis brings to the table with the versatility that he has in the type of player that he is.
Yeah, as I said, they have some depth issues, though. I mean, you look at the starting five, and it's great. Brennan Jennings behind Rose is great. But after that, I mean, again, Holiday, Vucevic, Lance Thomas, Clay Anthony early behind Carmelo, Kyle O'Quinn. I mean, nice hustle type player. Kind of behind in the 4 and 5 position. They're going to struggle there. Melo may be able to go to the 4, and then they maybe push Lee to the 3, and you might see some sets where Jennings and Rose play together and that type of thing too. But they have some depth issues too, so they're needing to figure that out. And they still lack shooting. And talking about a team that lacks shooting, in terms of most improved, again, I mentioned them briefly, kind of in passing. The Timberwolves. Again, this is a team that everyone's going to be loving to see. League pass favorite. Cat getting into his second year. Wiggins obviously drafting Chris Dunn, but they still need shooting as well too. And I don't know if Levine develops into like a knockdown 3-point shooter, then maybe that can really help them out some as well. But I really like this team as a team that's improved just by virtue of adding Thibodeau to the bench, and a couple other quick hitters. The Rockets, I think they're improved. Like the addition by subtraction, obviously with Dwight Howard, getting on out of there. They bring in Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, and get D'Antoni to kind of run that offensive system. I think they're going to be fun to watch. I think they'll be a better team than they've showed a season ago. So those are my kind of quick hitters on some of the other teams that I think have improved.
A couple of my quick hitters, Shaw, the Boston Celtics. They addressed the need that they needed in the front court, getting Al Horford. I know people are looking at this and saying, man, they're seriously rolling the dice. But you think about it. You think that the Boston Celtics will be able to continue to play at the level that they're expecting to play without having a formidable front court, without having some kind of physical presence in the front court? And I think that by doing this, it also opens up the door for the Boston Celtics over the next couple of years. I think that the combination that they've got in the backcourt has set themselves up where they can continually put themselves in play to be a free agency destination for some other guys come this next season and the season after that, where they look at them and say, hey, these guys are still in the playoff picture. These guys are obviously an above 500 basketball team. I might be the piece that they need to help Al Horford and Marcus Smart and Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley and these guys, to essentially put themselves in a position to take that next step, whether it be second round, semifinals, or possibly to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I definitely like the Boston Celtics making the move to get Al Horford. The depth, is kind of a toss up. We'll see how guys like Olynyk and them improve themselves now that Jared Sullinger is no longer there. The re-signing of Zeller, I think, was key, and also getting Gerald Green, another quality, explosive guy coming off the bench. And has a little bit of versatility to him and a little nasty to him too as well. So I like the Boston Celtics. And of course, why can't we talk about the San Antonio Spurs? You lose Tim Duncan, but you get Paul Gasol. And I don't know what the window really is going to be for the San Antonio Spurs, given the fact that they still have to deal with teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, teams like the Golden State Warriors. But you can't tell me that when you lose a guy like Tim Duncan, that getting a guy like Paul Gasol, who I think is still is a markup better for Tim Duncan, as from an offensive standpoint, I think that he can balance out what I think Popovich is expecting his front court players to do in order to get that push to put themselves deeper into the playoffs. No matter what you say, they are still set up to be successful. It's just a matter of, can the young talent take them over the top, kind of like when Popovich had to wait for Ginobili and Parker to get it together to play on the same page with Duncan. Can LaMarcus Aldridge, can Tony Parker, can Paul Gasol, can Kawhi Leonard, can these guys all put it together and be on the same page to do what I think the San Antonio Spurs, and we all been waiting for it, been set up to do since the 2013 season?
Yeah, I like that pick too. And I think it was a great choice with the Celtics with Horford. Yeah, I think they'll improve by 4 or 5 wins just by virtue of what he does, in the Brad Stevens system. And again, Pau Gasol going into San Antonio is more than a capable replacement for Tim Duncan for where the Spurs are now as an organization. But before we sign off on the segment, which of the bottom feeders, do you think had a better season or a better off season? Philadelphia 76ers, LA Lakers, I think with, them getting the number one and number two picks respectively. Philadelphia obviously getting Joel Embiid to potentially come to their roster. The Lakers get, a guy like a great veteran like Luol Deng to come to their roster, and they signed Mozgov as well too. I mean, again, we're not talking about vast improvement here, but which one of those two teams do you think had a better offseason?
That's a good question. I'm going to say the Los Angeles Lakers because of the fact that they got themselves some veteran guys to really balance out the younger talent. And I really feel like this is going to be predicated on what they're going to do with Jahlil Okafor. If the Philadelphia 76ers don't do something with Jahlil Okafor, if they're planning on keeping Joel Embiid, if he obviously is going to be the cornerstone piece, for me to understand where they're going and what direction they're headed, I just feel like they have a ton of young talent with no direction and no feel. And if you're not putting anything around that, then I don't know what purpose you truly serve. Like, I don't know if it's just a project or if there's a goal in mind. So I like the Lakers more so because Luol Deng is solid, no matter how you slice it. Timothy Mozgov, he just needs opportunity and time to play, and he needs to be in a system that he's comfortable in. And you got a guy like D'Angelo Russell, he's going to improve. Forget all of the nonsense that happened off the court. I think this guy obviously feels like he's got something to prove. Randall, Lance Jr., these guys are going to be a year better. I think they're going to be a better basketball team with these, with the veteran guys. It means they're going to have opportunities to get a couple of wins that they probably wouldn't understand how to get. And that's something that I just don't see the Philadelphia 76ers showing me. Again, I think it's just a serious, like they signed Jared Bayless, right? Which was nice. But to me, Ish Smith was a far, far more valuable player for them in what they need to do with the playmakers that they potentially have. They need a play creator. Jared Bayless is a guy that wants to shoot the basketball, has to have the rock in his hand. So I think he's a complete contradiction to what the 76ers, I think, were aiming to go. So it's going to depend on what they do with Okafor.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it doesn't matter. It might be Okafor, it might be Nerlens Noel. One of those guys may not be on the roster as they try to get a true point guard to man that position there for them. So I think I agree. I think I'm more a little bit on the Philadelphia side, simply because of just the overall talent that's on the roster. And I feel like they have, the ability to make moves, and the Colangelos, I should say, are going to be very open in the trade market and trying to create that and create some synergy for that roster and get that fan base back up to a level where they can be proud of that team. So I think either way, we're looking at kind of a push. I don't know if either one of them are vastly improved. Well, I like Philadelphia's roster a little bit more simply because I think they have some tradable pieces that they can even get more talent with one of those big guys that they have.
Well, listen, all that being said, Shaw, everybody in the NBA is somewhat improved in some way, shape, or form. And you got the money, you got to spend it. And that's exactly what these teams have done. But hopefully the ones that we have talked about will live up to the hype that we've already given them. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop. Time now to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. The big man, the king. Crown him. He's getting paid again. I feel like this is redundant. Like we said this last season. He signed a 3-year contract extension, $100 million with the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's safe to say that I think he's going to stay in Cleveland.
Ching ching, 3 years. I'm sure there's a team option or player option in there somewhere or whatever, but he's going to be the highest paid NBA player ever. I think by the middle of this contract, I think in year 2, he'll be at like $36 million a year or something like that based on the new escalating cap. So good for LeBron, but I think it's even better for the city of Cleveland, who don't have to worry about him signing one year deal and potentially leaving each season.
Oh yeah, especially since Matthew Dellavedova now is in Milwaukee. I mean,
that's what did it.
Clearly shed the thought. All right. Brook Lopez, he says he wants to change the losing culture of the Brooklyn Nets. Clearly, he must have been talking like he was in New Jersey. I don't know. Was he in Patterson? He may have been in Patterson.
Yeah, good luck, bro. I appreciate the effort. Good try, good effort, as they say. But a lot of that is going to be up to Sean Marks and what he does with this roster. Listen, they've done a decent job in trying to acquire talent over the summer. They got burned on a couple of free agents, Tyler Johnson and Alan Krause, to be very specific. But I think he did a decent job with what he had to work with them. Brook Lopez is going to be there for a little while now, and it's amazing because remember, he was all but gone to Orlando. What was that, 4 seasons ago? Like, that was a done deal, him for Dwight Howard, and now he's talking about changing the face, of that organization, if you will. So kudos to him for what he wants to do for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, listen, man, he's keeping it positive. There's a whole lot more that I can say about some other big men in the NBA who've been put in that same type of position. But yeah, man, it's a daunting task. You talk about changing the culture of the Brooklyn Nets, but more power to you, bro. Listen, I'll be there. I'll be around. You know what I'm saying? I'll hit up a couple of games if that's exactly what it is he's aiming to do. You know what I'm saying?
You're a nice guy.
I'm a nice guy. A stand-up guy, as always. Emeka Okafor is thinking about a comeback. Yeah, that must mean that he's trying to sign with the Golden State Warriors too, right?
Yeah, for real. 1-year deal, you know what I mean? Get to chase those rings. But, Emeka Okafor is a tough story. When you see guys, with neck and spinal problems and those types of things, and we just saw Prince Fielder, retire from baseball and swoop to him on a great career. Okafor, I think he's taken the time to make sure that he's been medically cleared and ready to come back. And I don't think he'd come back for the start of the season. He'd probably join a team maybe midway down the line in January, February, or right before, maybe even to be playoff eligible. If he does make it back, it'll be great to see him from a morale standpoint, but I don't know how much he has left in the tank where he can contribute on the floor.
Conspiracy theory, watch out. Golden State, listen, they've done this before, man. They be picking up big guys and jumping them, like, changing them like the weather. So if he's available and they're not getting much mileage from their bench, he might wind up being on that roster, bro.
Yeah, I mean, he's a defensive presence too. So I mean, I think and he's only going to go to a playoff contender type team. I mean, you might see a team maybe like Boston maybe try to make a late push to get some rim protection in there if he shows that he's able to do that. But you're right, the Warriors, the Spurs, it's the old heads that you always see, the Clippers. Those are all the teams I'll be looking for services come to the turn of the year.
No staff. And finally, Shaw, Rudy Gay. Oh my goodness. Rudy Gay says he's interested in getting moved to the Heat.
Hey. Come on down to South Beach, Rudy.
Oh, my goodness. Lord have mercy.
Listen, I think Gay sees an opportunity to really capitalize it and be the guy, which he hasn't had an opportunity to be in his NBA career, really. I think on this Miami Heat roster, he would be the guy. I saw he was down here in this area not too long ago. Shout out to my man, Irv, who runs a Blueprint Basketball. He was training a bunch of NBA guys, had Rudy Gay, had Jeff Green, Rajon Rondo out there. And a couple other guys, running out here, as he was running them through the gamut. And, I think Gay was like, you know what, this might not be a bad situation. So if Pat Riley and it can make it happen, I think he would, trade for Gay because I think he'd be immediately one of the best players offensively that the Miami Heat could have on their roster.
Well, listen, I don't know how many more teams he's going to go to for him to get that shine. And clearly he's running out of rosters to do this. But
something's not right with him in Sacramento. So
clearly, but I mean, look, I guess what better way to find yourself doing it than doing it down in Miami? At least then if you decide to retire, you get to retire in Miami, right? So
Rudy Gay, Dion Waiters shucking on the wings while Whiteside grabs the rebounds. I can't wait.
Hanging out with Dan Marino. I mean, listen, you live in the life, bro. You live in the life. Awesome show this week, Shaw, man. Phenomenal stuff. Great conversation being had, especially when we're talking about this NBA schedule, upcoming schedule, man. It's awesome. It's dynamic. I cannot wait for it to happen. Of course, I'm going to blow my money on the League Pass soon. So, everybody needs to get up on that.
Absolutely. I'll be blowing my money on League Pass too, watching it on all my different devices, watching it while I'm driving, I'm sure, when I'm not supposed to be. But definitely, I think, they did a great job with this, and the kudos to the NBA. Well, what are we, about 2.5 months away for these games really mattering? Olympic basketball is going to be ending within a week or so. So we're going to have a long haul, a long rest of the way before we get to. But training camp will be here soon enough. And then we'll get these games will start to count October 25th. Can't wait to get it popping. Yeah, most definitely, man. And so, and listen, I think somebody on the show is heading on a little vacay, right? Or it's gonna be out for like this upcoming weekend. Got any plans? Well, I gotta take the lady. It's their birthday, so shout out to her, and we just definitely start celebrating and doing some things in the Miami area. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we don't get in too much trouble. But I definitely gotta take care of the lady.
You might run into Rudy.
Yeah, for real. He's out here partying somewhere. So definitely. But listen to the fellas out there, man. You gotta take care of your girl. take the whole weekend, make her feel special. That's what I got to do, for mine, and I definitely can't wait to get it popping with her over the weekend.
Man, soundful advice, man. It ain't even Valentine's yet, and you already breaking out. You already bringing out the Harvey advice, man. Nice, I like it.
Everything on the show. One-stop shop.
Definitely. All right. Well, listen. Other than getting that sound advice from your boy, to be sure to you take care of your girl, you might want to also make sure you take care of your girl, getting her dipped down in all your favorite NBA gear. And to do that, you need to jump on fanessentials.net. Fanessentials.net gets you geared up for this upcoming NBA season. They find the sports gear so you don't have to. The prices start at $14.99 to $34.99. So once again, make sure you visit fanessentials.net. Use the promo code BASELINE at the checkout for 30% off of your first month. Be sure to visit fanessentials.net to get all the essentials you need for the baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.